Hi there, I'm Scott and this is GreatScott Knitting Dyes Yarn episode 19. In this episode I am going to be dyeing 3 skeins of Patton's Classic Wool Worsted, and while I was picking up these skeins of yarn at the store, I also saw this 4-pack of Wilton's icing colors in what appears to be relatively pastel colors. And so I wanted to see what I might be able to create with them. I'm soaking my 3 skeins of worsted weight yarn in about probably 12 cups of water with 3 tablespoons of white vinegar added. I'm going to let these soak for about 20 to 30 minutes, give or take a little bit, to make sure that they are good and saturated and ready to take up some color. After I've mixed my first color, which is going to be the creamy peach, I'm going to go ahead and add that to my yarn, which is slightly twisted in a shallow dye bath. And there's, of course, there's the vinegar that was in the soak water, and there's a little bit in the pan as well. I'm going to change things up and heat this in the oven as opposed to on the stove. After about 20 minutes in the oven, I pulled it out and you can see that they are very steamy. So I'm going to open them up and lay them out in a slightly different configuration. It's kind of interesting that this creamy peach has quite a bit of pink highlights to it. It'd be interesting to see if one could get this to break in a dip dyeing event, because it certainly seems to have broken a little bit here on these skeins. All right, to the top of this creamy peach, I'm going to be adding the color called Rose Petal Pink. Which oddly enough looks very brown, but it does, after heating, turn into a lovely shade. And I'm going to pop this into the oven for about 20 to 25 minutes. All right, out of the oven, here are our pink and peachy colored skeins of yarn. I'm just going to adjust the skeins of yarn on my zip ties a little bit. And now we're going to be going for the cooler colors, the blues and greens, to see if what happens when we add those on. Oh, and in case you're interested, the temperature that I have my oven at is 350 degrees. So things are getting really warm in there, but there's no boiling that happens. And as these are not, this is just regular wool, this is not superwash wool, I do need to be somewhat careful as I manipulate it so that it doesn't felt. So I'm definitely don't want these skeins to boil, and I am trying to be somewhat gentle. Yeah, I need to get some tongs because these skeins of yarn are still really hot. I'll use this instead. Just need something to be able to move the skeins around a bit. And here I am using my hands anyway. Here we go. This is what I've got this darn thing out for. Okay, I'm trying to expose some undyed sections before I add in my next color. And this next color is cornflower blue. And now I'll pop this into the oven for another probably 20 or 30 minutes. And so now here are my skeins of yarn coming out of that steamy oven. These are actually really pretty right now. I'm going to contemplate, I should really contemplate stopping here, but you know what? I think I am going to go full steam ahead and add in that moss green. I have it, I'm just curious as to what will happen. And now here we have our moss green, which doesn't seem very pastel, seems very strong. Well, we'll see how these turn out. And we'll pop this into the oven for probably about 25 to 30 minutes. Well, definitely should have stopped at the last one because I don't like all the green. So I'm going to add some more cornflower blue to see if I can offset that green color that's there. I'm going to move some of that color around as well. All right, going to pop this back in the oven, see what comes out. Well, here's how they came out. They're still really, really green. But there's some nice pink and even sort of purpley tonalities to it. So I'm going to wash these up and hang them to dry and see how I feel about them once they're completely dried. Certainly hasn't gone in the direction that I thought they would go. This green color was a lot stronger than I anticipated. So yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and rinse these up. First thing I want to do is check to see if there's any bleeding. And again, I don't want to manipulate these skeins of yarn too much as they are non-superwash wool. I'm not seeing any bleeding of color. So I'm going to go ahead and add in a little bit of dish soap and see if that will start any bleeding. And I'm not seeing any color coming out of this yarn, which is great. I think I'm going to be using the oven more often instead of the stovetop, because I really kind of like how the yarn was hot but not boiling, which I think allowed for more uniform heating to the yarn to set the color. Of course, it also helped that I let it completely cool before starting the rinse process. So I'll finish rinsing this up, hang it to dry, and take a look at how it turned out. I got to tell you, I wasn't real keen on how it turned out. The green, even so, oftentimes when yarn will dry, it dries lighter than it looks when it's wet. And these skeins of yarn were still super, super green. And I just wasn't happy with it. So you can always go more. You can't go backwards. And of course, looking in hindsight, I should never have added the green at all. It was great with just the first three colors. But because I don't like where it's gone, I'm going to add a home mixed navy. So basically blue food coloring with a little bit of crimson. So that's basically blue number 1 with a little bit of red 40 added to it. It's a hint on the purple side, but still extremely blue. So I'm going to throw these 3 skeins of yarn into a hot pot. I'm still going to pop it into the oven, but I have hot water these skeins of yarn I brought to a simmer on the stovetop. But I'm going to, after I've added the dye, I'm going to pop it into a 350 degree oven for about 20 minutes or until the pot has cleared, and then I'll let them cool and we will rinse them, hang them to dry, and look at the final product. I can tell from this final picture of that blue dye that I think I'm going to be a lot happier with how these turn out. So we're going to see. So here are my final skeins of yarn from this experiment. Totally not where I was going or where I thought these colors were going to take me. But the final destination is still really interesting and actually quite stunning. I'm very curious as to how these will knit up. They are extremely variegated, definitely non-repeating. You can see some of the pinks, and actually you can still see some of the creamy peach peeking out every once in a while. But you still have some blues, some teals, some purple and violet types of colors all the way through. So they're very interesting. Just much darker than I was expecting. And as you look up here real close, you can see all of the different colors that are coming out in these skeins of yarn. Now, of course, they are not exact in, they're not exact duplicates of each other. There is different tonalities within each. So if I were to use these all in one project, I'd want to alternate skeins to make sure that it doesn't look like an abrupt change. For me, I'm still in a experimental phase of dyeing yarn, playing with different techniques. Of late, I've really been into this sort of dumping big amounts of dye on the yarn, letting them play with each other and see what comes out at the end. I've seen other dyers do this. They're professional, they know what they're doing, and have a completely different setup. I think a lot of the things that make some of the dyers that I have watched, what makes them successful is they're dyeing a lot more skeins, and so they have some natural resist going on in the pan. They're using, of course, professional acid dyes, where I'm using food coloring. And they have more experience. So, yeah, they're going to be probably a lot more successful. However, that being said, I love these 3 skeins of yarn. I think they're absolutely gorgeous. The different tonalities and colors are really a lot of fun. They are much darker and much greener than I had ever expected to see from the food coloring that I started with. I'm definitely going to explore with this food coloring a bit more. I have some more bare non-superwash wool that I'm going to play around with and see what I come up with. But here these are, and they're beautiful, and I can't wait to make use of them. Thank you for taking the time to watch me experiment with dyeing yarn using food coloring. I hope you're enjoying what you find on this channel. If you do, be sure and click the subscribe button, and also click on the little bell icon so that you're informed about when I upload new content. If you like this particular video, click the like button, and be sure and give me a shout out in the comments below, or you can find me on Instagram at GreatScott Knitting, or on Facebook at GreatScott Knitting page. I'll have links to all that in the show notes below. So, hey, thanks for taking some time. May you have peace in your home and the wealth of joy for all those who dwell there. Bye.